Cek cek. Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian, acara akan segera kita mulai. Dimohon untuk mengisi di depan terlebih dahulu. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we cordially invite you to be seated at the prescribed chair in the main hall because in a few minutes the ceremony will proceed in no time. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Director General of Information and Public Communication, Ministry of Communication and Information, Dr. Usman Kansong, SOS MSI. The Honorable Rector Universitas Malikus Saleh, representative by Vice Rector Academic Affairs, Dr. Insinyur Azhari MSc IPM ASEAN Engineer. The Honorable Dean of Social and Political Science Universitas Malikus Saleh, Dr. M. Nazarudin. The Honorable Kepala Biro Akademik, Dr. Teguh Nazarudin. The Honorable Dean of Social and Political Science Universitas Teguh Umar, Bapak Basri SHMH, the Honorable Representative of Bank Aceh, the Honorable Representative of Korem Lilawangsa, the Honorable of Polres Lok Sumawe, the Honorable Representative of Wali Kota Lok Sumawe. The Honorable all the keynote speakers, Professor Damian Kingsbury from Deakin University, Australia, Professor Dr. Gali Muhammado M.Sik from University of Cameroon, Professor Dr. Nirzalin MSI, CIQAR from Universitas Maliku Saleh, Associate Professor Dr. Ayesah Uy Abu Bakar from Al-Bukhari International University, Owen Podger, MARCH from University of Canberra, Dr. Zulnazri SSIMT from Center of Excellence of Technology Natural Polymer Recycled Plastic, Universitas Maliku Saleh, Dr. M. Nazarudin SPMP from Center of Excellence of Biodiesel Research and Innovation, Universitas Maliku Saleh. The honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let's praise our God Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, the creator and sustainer of the universe. Peace be upon Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the last messenger of Allah who has guided human life from the distraction into the right way of Islam. The honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizers, we would like to extend a warm welcome and express our gratitude for participating in the 4th International Conference on Social Science, Political Science, and Humanities by theme Toward Peace and Sustainable Development, Local, National, and International Issues. I am Ade Moana, acting as the master of ceremony of this event today. The honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to honor our country, let us all rise for the singing of the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya, and continued with the March Unimau. Audience, please all rise. Thank you. Please be seated. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before we start our agenda for today, there will be reciting the Holy Quran, who will be recited by Saudara Johan Hasibuan and continued with doa. To Saudara Johan Hasibuan, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم. وإذا قيل انشجوا فانشجوا يرفع الله. يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات. والله بما تعملون خبير. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ناجيتم الرسول إذا ناديتم الرسول فقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقة. ذلك خير لكم وأطهر. فإن لم تجدوا فإن الله غفور رحيم. صدق الله العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وقوت الأرواح وججائها وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إنا نسألك سلامة في الدين وعافية في جسدنا وزيادة في علمنا وبركة في رزقنا وتوبة قبل الموت ورحمة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت. اللهم هون علينا في شكرات الموت والنجاة من النار والعفو عند الحساب. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين في فلسطين. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ولوالدينا وارحمهما كما ربيانا صغيرا. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين بفضلك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
The honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the next agenda. It is welcoming speech by the chairman of ICoSPOLHUM 2023, Professor Dr. Suadi. Professor Dr. Suadi, please proceed to the stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Honorable distinguished leader within Malikus Saleh University, Rector, Vice Rector, Deans, Head of Institutions, the Chief of Academic Bureau, especially respected Deans and Vice Deans, Faculty of Social Science, Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Malikus Saleh, respected scholar, practitioner, peace and sustainable development advocate, and all stakeholders, and all sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you and welcome to this conference, the fourth ICoSPOLHUM. I am pleased to stand before you today on behalf of the organizing committee of the fourth International Conference, Social Science, Political Science and Humanities 2023. This conference, dedicated to the critical term of peace and sustainable development, has been an incredible journey, and I want to extend my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you, our participants, esteemed speaker, sponsor, a dedicated volunteer for making this event a resounding success. Our primary goal for this conference was to create a platform for meaningful dialogue and collaboration of intricate relationship between peace and development. Our chosen themes toward peace and sustainable development, local, national, and international issues was carefully crafted to emphasize the interconnectedness of two vital elements in shaping resilient and equitable global society. I am thrilled to announce that we have received an overwhelming more than 60 papers from numerous countries. Is a clear testament to the importance of the topic we are discussing and the global interest in addressing this critical issue. One of this conference's most valuable aspects was is networking and collaboration opportunities. It was chance for all of us to connect with like-minded individuals, forge new partnership, and explore avenues for joint initiatives that have the potential to contribute lasting positive change on global scale. I want to extend my most profound appreciation to the organizing committee members, volunteers, and our dedicated staff who have worked tirelessly behind the screen to ensure the success of this conference. The commitment has been truly exceptional. I also want to express our gratitude to the speaker, participant, sponsor, and all those to support of our belief in the vision of this conference, especially to the guests who have come to this conference of lines, respected to you all. Finally, I say you, thank you for your unwavering commitment to building a world founded on peace and sustainable development. Your dedication and enthusiasm has been the driving force behind our success. And I am excited to see what positive change we can inspire together in the future. Once more, thank you very much. And let's act on our conference earnestly. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Swadi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the Faculty of Social Science and Political Science fully support this event, I would like to invite the Dean of this faculty, Dr. Nazaruddin, SSMSE, to also welcome all the participants here. Dr. Nazaruddin, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalaman ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa mawalah. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and distinguished participants, all praise to Allah, the Mighty, on this happy day. We are all given to opportunity by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to attend this international conference. Blessing and greeting to Rasulullah Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has made us all make moral and knowledge the basis of our action and has built bridges of academic interaction. As a dean, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all speakers from various fields and science and universities. Number one, Dr. Usman Kansong, Director General of Public Information and Communication, Ministry of Communication and Informatics of Republik Indonesia. Thank you very much for coming, Bang Usman Kansong. Number one, Prof. Demin Kingsbury, Deakin University, Australia. Number three, Owen Pogger, University of Canberra, Australia. Prof. Nirzalin, Universitas Malikus Saleh, Indonesia, Associate Professor Aisyah Uye Abu Bakar, right? Al-Bukhari Al-Bukhari International University Malaysia, Profesor Gali Muhammadu, University of Cameroon, from Africa, Dr. Zul Nazri, Center of Excellence of Technology, Natural Polymer, and Recycle Plastic, Universitas Malikus Saleh, CEO Universitas Malikus Saleh, Dr. M. Nazaruddin, it is not me, Center of Excellence of Biodiesel Research and Innovation, Universitas Malikus Saleh. We are especially honored by the presence of Rector of Universitas Malikus Saleh, represented by Vice Rector Academic Affairs. Thank you very much, Pak Prof. Azhari, for coming. Vice Rector for Finance and Administrative, not yet coming. Vice Rector for Student and Alumni Affairs, tidak nampak. Dean of Universitas Malikus Saleh, Head of Bureaus, terima kasih Pak Nazar. Head of Central Library, Pak Prof. Muhammad, terima kasih for coming. Head of Technical Implementation Unit, Pak Kemal Fasya. Thank you, Ampun, for coming. Lecturers, student of Visipol Universitas Malikus Saleh, and all audience. Terima kasih Pak sudah hadir dari mewakili pemerintah Kota Luxmame, Bapak mewakili Polres Luxmame, Bapak mewakili dari Kodim, Korem. Terima kasih atas kehadiran saudara semua. It is with great pleasure and honor that I stand before you today as we gather for this significant event, the International Conference on Steward Peace and Sustainable Development, local, national, and international issues. This assembly of brilliant minds from various corners and the globe reflect our commitment in addressing the pressing challenges that confront our world today. In an era marked by unpredicted connectivity, our global community faces a myriad of complex issues that transcend borders. The need for peace and sustainable development has never been more urgent. As an instant, it is very important to maintain the peace in Aceh by upholding the commitment contained in the Memorandum of Understanding of Helsinki, MOU Helsinki, while also increasing welfare and promote social justice. We do hope that this conference serves as a platform to explore innovative solutions to the existing conflict in Papua, in Tanah Papua, war between Russia and Ukraine, and the current humanitarian crisis in Palestine, which stem from the Zionist occupation on the Palestine land. This conference is also intended to foster collaboration across local, national, and international level. Last but not least, especially Prof. Swadi and Prof. Muhammad, I would like to express my gratitude to Conference Committee for making this conference possible. Thank you, Prof. Swadi. I wish us all a fruitful and inspiring conference filled with meaningful discussion, new connection, and transformative insights. May our collective effort pave the way toward a world of enduring peace and sustainable development. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Dekan Dr. Nazarudin. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to have the Vice Rector Academic Affairs of Universitas Maluku Saleh, Dr. Insinyur Azhari MSc IPM Asian Engineer, to deliver a speech, and afterward we would like to request Bapak Wakil Rektor to officially open the 4th International Conference on Social Science, Political Science, and Humanities. Please, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajmain. All praise to Allah Subhanahu wa taala. We are given the opportunity by Allah Subhanahu wa taala to attend this international conference together. Blessing and greeting to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Honorable Bapak Dr. Usman Kansong, Directorate General, Minister of Communication and Informatics, Republic of Indonesia. Welcome to Universitas Maluku Saleh, Pak Usman. Honorable the representative of Danrem, Lila Wangsa, Honorable the representative of Polres Teluk Semawe, Honorable of Major Teluk Semawe, Honorable of Dean Faculty Political Science and Social Science, Universitas Maluku Saleh, Honorable of Dean Faculty Social Science and Political Science, Universitas Teguh Umar. Welcome. Honorable of Head Technical Implementation Unit, Universitas Maluku Saleh, lecturers, student, and our audience. I would like to also welcome our keynote speakers, Honorable Professor Damain Kingsbury from Deakin University, Australia, Professor Owen Podger from University of Canberra, Australia, Honorable Professor Gali Muhammadu from University of Cameroon, Professor Dr. Aisyah Abu Bakar from Al-Bukhari International University, and Honorable Professor Nirzalin, Professor Dur Nazri, Professor Muhammad Abu Bakar, Professor Muhammad Nazar, and Professor Swadi as our local keynote speaker from Universitas Maluku Saleh. Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Maluku Saleh, hold a forum for developing science in social, political, and humanities issues that have an academic moral obligation to continue to contribute and innovate in generating thought, theorizing and downstreaming their academic finding in the form of concept, model, and policy brief that can be used as reference by the government in producing various policies in formulating sustainable development program. The fourth International Conference on Social Science, Political Science, and Humanities, with the theme Toward Peace and Sustainable Development, Local, National, and International Issues. We believe and do hope that today's international conference will not only be a platform for presenting strategic findings and solutions to the issues that are developing in the realm of multidisciplinary science, but also an arena for the formation of collaboration, academic ecosystem, and institutional collaboration that encourage continuous support for sustainable development globally. Together we are strong, together we can. Enjoy the conference. And last but not least, on behalf of the Rector Universitas Maliku Saleh, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the fourth International Conference on Social Science, Political Science, and Humanities, with the theme Toward Peace and Sustainable Development, Local, National, and International Issue, is open officially. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Vice Rector. The honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to present the traditional dance presented by the communication students Sanggar Sirapute, Ranup Lampuan. The Ranup Lampuan dance is a traditional dance offering to welcome guests. And today, the dancers will donate the funds collected as a form of solidarity for peace in Palestine.
Ya, Pak Gladi. Yo, 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 yo.
Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian, dana yang dikumpulkan oleh para penari akan disumbangkan untuk warga Palestina.
Blinding flash of white light lit up the sky over Gaza tonight. People running for cover, not knowing whether they're dead or alive. They came with their tanks and their planes, with ravaging fiery flames, and nothing remains. Just a voice rising up in the smoky haze. We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
Thank you so much Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian. Before we start our sessions, we would like to invite Bapak Dr. Usman Kansong to the floor to get token of appreciations from Dr. Azhari, Wakil Rektor Akademik, Urusan Akademik. And we would like to invite Bapak Dekan untuk memberikan sertifikat. Bapak Dekan, dipersilahkan. And we would like to invite perwakilan dari Bank Aceh, Bapak Dedi, dan sertifikatnya akan diberikan oleh Ketua Panitia, Bapak Profesor Dr. Swadi. Thank you for all the sponsors today. And the last one, we will invite a representative of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Wahyu, dan akan diberikan oleh Bapak Dr. Muhammad. Representative of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Wahyu. Please kindly remain on the stage, Bapak-Bapak, karena kita akan foto bersama. Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian, dimohon untuk foto bersama terlebih dahulu sebelum kita memasuki sesi selanjutnya. Siapa lagi yang kita suruh maju untuk foto? Bapak Kepala Biro Humas. Bapak Afrizal dari UTU. Ibu Dekan Fakultas Ekonomi, silakan Ibu. Tengku Muntasir. Thank you so much Bapak Ibu. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we will start our session on International Conference on Social Science, Political Science and Humanities 2023 by theme Toward Peace and Sustainable Development, Local, National and International Issues. Without any further ado, we would like to welcome on stage Bapak Dr. Muhammad as moderator. Please welcome Bapak Dr. Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Peace and blessing be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First of all, I would like to welcome all of the keynote speakers and honorable guests, invited guests, potential sponsors to our fourth international conference on social science, politics, and humanities. Without further ado, for morning session, we'll have 4 keynote speakers. The first will be our honorable speakers from Director of Kominfo, Ministry of Information of Indonesia. That is Honorable Dr. Usman Kansong, SOS MSI. Please come on the stage. And then I would like to invite Professor Dr. Nizarlin, MSI SICAR. Please come on the stage. We are very lucky for this conference. We have our guest speaker is available on stage in-house, so we can discuss directly. And then we have Professor Dr. Gali Muhammadu, Master Psychology from the University of Ndero, Cameroon. And then we have Professor Damien Kingsbury from Australia. And for your information, Professor Damien Kingsbury is playmakers in the creation of his agreement between the GAM and the Republic of Indonesia in Helsinki. So he played a very important role in that case. And we are lucky to have his time to join us for this morning session. And both of them, Professor Dr. Gali and Professor Damien Kingsbury, will be joining us via online. And we hope by this time, Professor Gali especially, is around 4 or 5 in the morning, is Subuh time. And perhaps it would take some time. I used to call him at this time, so he said this is time for Subuh. And I hope Prof. Damien Kingsbury also already there online. But for the time being, we will start the speech. Will be delivered by our Honorable Bapak Dr. Usman Kansong, that he will present with the topic. Sorry. The 2 faces of media, if I'm not mistaken. AI, yeah. So it's going to be a very interesting talk today. And we have Professor Nizali going to talk about how social integration in ex-combatant and the society, case of Nisam Antara. And we will have Prof. Gali to talk about the sustainable development from perspective of psychology. And we have Prof. Damin will talk about sustainable and peace from the perspective of politics, inshallah. So we are not going to delay the time anymore. We give the time for Yang Berhormat Bapak Usman, silakan.
Thank you very much, moderator, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, distinguished participants in this international conference. I will be talking on the topic of artificial intelligence. And I'm trying to relate the artificial intelligence in terms of peace. 3 weeks ago, I was sent a video by intelligence body. The video contained the speech of President Jokowi. President Jokowi spoke in Mandarin. And we all know that our president cannot speak Mandarin. Seeing the video, I directly know that the video is deep fake. We call it deep fake. Deep fake means a hoax. Deep fake means hoax in a form of video and audio. The sound of the video, of course, was similar to the sound of Presiden Jokowi. Jadi suaranya itu memang mirip sekali suara Pak Jokowi. Ya mirip sekali. And then I sent the video to my colleague in Kominfo. I asked him to take down the video from the platform. The platform was TikTok. The video actually was the speech of President in the front or before the Chamber of Commerce in United States of America. President spoke in English at that time, but artificial intelligence changed the speech in English to Mandarin. That's the evil side or the evil face of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence as a technology always has double faces, has two faces. Evil face and good face. For example, in terms of good faces, the technology create social media. We can communicate via social media. But the negative access of social media, that social media can be used to spread the hoax, disinformation, misinformation. And the disinformation in the social media can create conflict. Even can create war, maybe. For example, in political election, like we will have next year, hoax in social media can cause a conflict between us. So I think that we should be careful in developing and using the digital technology, the artificial intelligence. What do we need to develop and use the artificial intelligence, we need, yes, we need regulation. We need regulation. The regulation will improve. The regulation will improve the good sides, the good face of the technology. And the regulation can control the evil side, the evil face of the technology. We need what I call voluntary regulations or ethics and rule of law or force regulation. We need ethics and rule of law. In the AI Safety Summit in London on 1st November 2023, where our Deputy Minister joined the conference in United Kingdom, there was a declaration that artificial intelligence can create the catastrophic. The artificial intelligence can create the catastrophic. So, once again, that we need regulation to control the artificial intelligence, the development of artificial intelligence. There's some ironies in developing the artificial intelligence. We believe that artificial intelligence will not replace human, because we as human have emotion, feelings, love, anger, and so on. The artificial intelligence doesn't have, the artificial intelligence doesn't have feeling, emotion, anger, and so on. Jadi sering dikatakan bahwa tidak akan teknologi itu, artificial intelligence atau kecerdasan buatan itu menggantikan manusia. Karena manusia punya perasaan, punya cinta, punya kemarahan, punya emosi, dan seterusnya. Bahkan punya spiritualitas manusia. Tapi yang namanya the artificial intelligence, maybe she kata gantinya she. Artificial intelligence kalau kita baca di buku-buku kata gantinya she. She maybe perhaps has intellectual intelligence, intellectual questions, but she of course doesn't have emotion question and also spiritual questions. But because of the human has feelings, emotions, love, anger, we can be replaced by artificial intelligence. Yeah, for example, in South Korea, di Korea Selatan, 3 TV presenters, 3 presenter televisi has been fired, dipecat oleh perusahaannya karena because one of the presenters, ya satu presenter itu membuli kawannya, satu presenter dalam live itu bersumpah, waktu live, laporan live dia bersumpah. Kemudian yang lain lagi itu melecehkan pelawak komedian yang sudah meninggal. Diganti oleh virtual presenters, avatar. Kenapa diganti? Karena virtual presenter cannot be angry, nggak bisa marah, dia tidak bakal nuntut kenaikan gaji, tidak akan protes, tidak mungkin bersumpah. Nah, jadi justru karena kita punya emosi, punya cinta dan lain, kita itu makin cepat digantikan oleh mesin. Ya, digantikan oleh mesin. Nah, jadi kita, so we have to be careful in developing the technology, in developing the artificial intelligence. We have to develop the technology and the artificial intelligence for our welfare. We should be developing the artificial intelligence in terms of human-centric. We call it human-centric, berpusat pada manusia. Berpusat pada manusia. We don't have to develop the artificial intelligence, for example, for the company who developing the artificial intelligence just for profit, just for benefit, but for the welfare of all humans in the world. We know that there are interrelationship between welfare and peace, between peace and welfare. Peace needs welfare. Welfare needs peace. We cannot create the peace without welfare. We cannot create welfare without peace. So, in terms of peace, we should develop the artificial intelligence, the technology to create the welfare. So, we can create the peace via technology. Our country has national strategy in developing artificial intelligence. One of the strategy is ethics and rule of law. Once again, that the regulation is very important to control the development of the artificial intelligence, so we can improve the good phases of the artificial intelligence and decrease or minimize the evil side, the evil phases of the artificial intelligence. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yang Berhormat Bapak Usman Kasong, who has been, I think they left us with 10 minutes, so we will have more time for discussion later on. It is very interesting to talk about the dolphin process of the technology and the two blades of technology where it comes with positive thing and it also comes with negative thing. Wrong information that we post in the post, it can trigger any conflict, sometimes even to war. And therefore we really need a good, regulation that could regulate the development of this technology. Although it is almost impossible to regulate something that never can be touched, something that can be measured. It is in the world of realm, but it is there. We can feel it, but we cannot regulate. It is very fair. So independent in itself. So without further ado, we would like to invite Professor Nizalin to deliver his speech on social reintegration of ex-combatant and civil society of Settled Peace, learning from Nisam Antaram community, Aceh, Indonesia. And he would like, I remember when we have a ICoSPOLHUM conference, Professor Finner, yeah. So we are discussing all Indonesian inside the hall. So he said, since you all Indonesian, why don't you talk in Bahasa so you can communicate better? So at this conference, I would like to try that. So I already suggest to all speakers, they have the chance whether to speak in Bahasa or they mix with English. So the communication will be taken care very well. So I would like to invite Professor Nizalin to give his speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin wa bihi nasta'in ala umri din salatan wassalaman ala rasulillah. Thank you for our God, Allah SWT, who has given us a good opportunity and the best time for us to attend this international conference. Salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has bring us from the darkness to the likeness and to be one ummah, the civilized ummah, as we feel today. Honorable to Director General Director of Minister Communication and Informatics Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Usman Kansong. Welcome to our university and we hope your support every day to make us better in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, to present my work based on my research in Nisam Antara, may I stand in front of you? Okay. I think better if I stand up. And then, could you show my PPT? Okay, sorry. You have the PowerPoint. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give me a good opportunity to present what I find in the field of our research, our team of research. There is some member attend here, Pak Razi, Pak Rizky. There is my team in this research. Our research based on the fact in Aceh, for especially after the conflicts. And our research based on the what Torjensen, Kaplan, and Badari finds in their work, that the reintegration of the conflict is the most important things, because if not reintegration will build after the conflict will be trapped in this situation is more danger before. Okay, as we know, one of the longest conflict in unitary states of Republic of Indonesia is between Aceh movement and the Republic of Indonesia. That reconciled is the conflict which occurred from 1976 till 2005. And the end of the conflict required reintegration between ex-combatants and civil society, which almost broke when the conflict era. As we know, in the conflict era of Aceh, we can find two divided groups of civil society. One group pro to the Republic of Indonesia, and the other group is pro to the separatism or to the GAM. And of course, we can separate two victims too. One is the victim from the GAM and the other from the Republic of Indonesia. And these victims is not in the peace condition when reintegration needed. Why the reintegration very important? As the experience in Burundi, Sierra Leone, Colombia, and Nepal, that countries is failed to make reintegration. Then what is happened there? When the reintegration is failed, actually led to the emergence of new conflict between ex-combatant and civil society. The ex-combatant rise to be a new criminal groups. They become a new gangs, mafia of drugs, robbery, stealings, and other violence. So next. So the transformation of conflicts into peace can only be carried through social and emotional reunification between the perpetrators of the conflict and the victim community. Therefore, reintegration is a crucial issue that must be addressed seriously and comprehensively in former conflict areas. This is like say by Thor Jensen, Kaplan, Nusio, and Benderi. And we find these situations in Aceh. When reconciles 2005 rise in the Aceh, we find a half of GAM's combatant rise to be a new criminal in Aceh. So that this is very important. Next. What we find in Nisam Antara society is difference in other places in Aceh and also in Sierra Leone, Burundi, and Nepal. In Nisam Antara, the reintegrations speed up and strengthens because they have one's local wisdom exists there. They say Metingku Tiji. Metingku Tiji is carrying each other. The philosophy from the norms of Metingku Tiji is the obligation to treat fellow citizens of Nisam Antara as brothers, and people who have more economic capital to help the weak has become social capital that bind emotionally and the same time as collective performance. So everyone in Nisam Antara who has more capital, actually in power, in economic and other sides, should be or they have obligation to carry out the other citizen of society there. For example, as ex-combatants owner of palm oil plantations owned by Rando, he have 1,000 hectares of palm oil plantation. He has obligation to take all the worker from the citizen of Nisam Antara, not from the other sides. Metingku Tiji tends to be the norm where there is every citizen of Nisam Antara will a brotherhood. So they can forget what happens in the past era. And they know is the brotherhood. And the second and the third former combatant commander Rando, plantation became an arena for trainings and for speed ups the reintegration, because in these fields, in this field of plantations, everyone's in Nisam Antara work together and get gain together from the plantations. Almost they teach monthly 7 millions a month for everyone workers there. So what they get is enough to their family life every day. And then our conclusion was, in this arena, in palm oil business plantations, ex-combatants and civil society of Nizam Antara gets mutual prosperity and strong social relation after that. Next. Next. Okay. And then what we find? Shortly, if we make flowchart like this, local wisdom, so TG, is one of the important things that there isn't in Sierra Leone, in Burundi and Nepal. So, but Aceh, we have that. Metingku TG drive and will be a means for the ex-combatants or everyone how to make reintegrated in Aceh to be a social capital. And this social capital, for example, in the Nizam Antara, mobilized by the owner of the palm oil plantation, Rando, the commander of ex-combatants, to mobilize this social capital to make it unite between victims, civil society, and the ex-combatants. And with this palm oil plantation business, they got shared economic prosperity. And this prosperity guarantee for peace sustainable. This shared economic prosperity then make it what I said just now, social reintegration speed up and strengthens in Nizam Antara. Without social capital, shared economic prosperity, this is impossible thing will be happens. As I tell you just now in Nepal and so on. So this social reintegration is the science and milestones in Nizam Antara make it sustainable of peace till now. And they become one society now. Next. The conclusion for my slide is important finding from the reintegration study carried on Nizam Antara. First, the reintegration process required media as a place to take place that. In this context is the oil palm plantation. So if the other sides of Aceh, many activists give many critical to the palm oil plantation, but in the case of the sustainable of peace in Aceh, what we find in our study, this is very important because the palm oil plantation is the place to make shared economy and to make between society and ex-combatants. Every day they meet and every day they can communicate and every day they can get share of economics. And the second, the value of local wisdom can be a trigger for the formation of individual social capital and collective social capital that supports training reintegration. So from this research, we edit what Torjensen, Kaplan, and Badari found to make reintegration speed up and straining. We need local wisdom as social capital. Without that, the reintegration will be difficult to rise in the area, every areas of the conflicts. Next. These two things bring us to the discussion that strengthening reintegration in former conflict areas can be carried out through the mobilization of social capital and shared prosperity between ex-combatant, conflict victim, and civil society. In the case of Aceh, I think Bang Kemal should give a big attention to this. Yeah, because he is one of the most critical men or academician in Aceh to this case. We show Bang Kemal, oil palm plantations are strategic and significant medium in supporting all of these processes. Yeah, especially in Aceh case. The ex-combatant in Aceh failed to be contractor, failed to be entrepreneur, but they success to be the owner of palm oil plantations. Okay, this is, we can prove this from 2 years our study in Aceh. The success of reintegration can be seen from the change in the identity of former GAM combatants, from combatant of civilian, and change in the behavior of ex-combatant in the social, political, and economic arenas. So now we can find many leaders of politics in Aceh from GAM, many leaders in the sphere of economic and social from GAM. GAM and our ex-combatants and civil society now in Aceh is one. No, we cannot divide again because orang Aceh, because the Acehnese feels GAM is his brother. No, before, no, and in the future. I think that is all of my presentation. I feel so happy if we have a time to discuss about what we find in our field of study. Thank you very much. Fruitful discussion, I hope. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Nizalin, for such insightful presentation on the social reintegration of ex-combatant and civil society for sustainable peace. With one very important quote here is that netiji netinku. Netiji netinku mean you carry, you hold it up and then you carried it with all-heartedly. Netiji netinku. This is a very important local quote and wisdom where we could translate it in the form that we care and we cradle. I think that is the best word to describe this, netiji netinku. And now we go to the third keynote speaker, that is Professor Dr. Gali Mohammadou. He will talk on religion and development in the African context. I hope our honorable speakers already online. Suara. Please, the voice already. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Gali. Professor Gali. Excuse me, I have to get down.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Professor
rahmatullahi wa
Gali.
barakatuh. Oui, yes, Professor Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Tolong visualnya dikasih besar.
Hello? Do you hear me?
Okay, Professor Gali. Welcome, Professor Gali, to Aceh, the visual.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad.
Suaranya, tolong. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Professor Gali.
Yes, Dr. Muhammad. Do you hear me? Oh, technology. Hello, Dr. Muhammad.
Can, no.
Hello.
All right. The voice already with us now.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You have 30 minutes. Take your time.
Thank you very much. But we are approaching Subu prayer. Anyway, I will try to by my level best to do it within 20 minutes or 15 minutes. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. All praise be to Allah Almighty for giving me this opportunity to be part of this big event organized by the Malik Saleh University. I'm indeed happy to be with you, Dr. Muhammad, my long-standing brother, with whom we have lived in Malaysia in the years 1990. My topic of talk is religion and development in the African context. So I try to come up with two papers, but since you have announced that I should be talking on religion and development in the African context, then I will go by that.
Professor, you have the slide to present?
Yes, I sent to Dr. Swadi.
Fatih, tolong itu slide-nya di slide Profesor Gali. Hai, slide Profesor Gali. Slide PowerPoint.
Point, yes.
What? Ayo. Just a minute.
Okay.
Ada. Okay, can you please? Coba ditampilin. Abang kali you can use bahasa also, just to make the interaction more lively.
Since I know my Bahasa is gone because you don't talk to me in Bahasa.
Yes.
But at the end I will finish with Bahasa. Terima kasih.
Di mana di postnya mana? We have what do you call a combined event today. Also, the second day of convocation for for our undergraduate degree.
I see. Okay, that's great.
All right, we have the presentation now. Please proceed, Prof.
Thank you very much once again. I thank you for making or inviting me to this big event, as I said. And my topic is on religion on the African continent, religion and development on the African continent. As an introduction, I say to talk about religion and development is quite a challenging. It's quite a challenge because the two words, religion and development, are not clearly defined. As a result, we have our own, most of all, we have our own understanding and interpretation of history and stories about religion and development. Religion and development is an important topic, far beyond the issue of economic development. We know that. You see, the whole world is governed by different types of religion, we call it. We have some societies that are pluralistic societies, whereby many religions are practiced in that society. So that is why we say it goes beyond the issue of economic development. I'm indeed very glad that the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, University of Maliku Saleh, Aceh, Indonesia, organized this conference, which has attracted so many participants. I'm especially glad that the participants come from many parts of the world and different areas of expertise. Just now, I listened to the talk given by our senior on artificial intelligence. I'm very much amazed by that. And also, the issue of ex-combatant in reintegration is my area of interest as well. So that's why I say the expertise that are present in this conference, such as academics as well as practitioners, representatives of different religious denominations, as well as organizations devoted to development. This is the chance for all of us. The topic religion and development has become increasingly important, since it is impossible to cover all aspects at a conference like this one. Now we look at the role of religion in development. Religion, as we all know, is a guidance for mankind, because without religion, people will go astray. People will go before. You look at what is happening nowadays in the world. Insecurity. Some of the insecurity are caused by, religion. What I mean by religion, people who malpractice their religion. So, as a guidance for mankind, is a remedy for all human problems, needs, and so on and so forth. Because religion depends on who is practicing it, the level of iman of each and every individuals. However, some aspect of religion can be complementary and sometimes be the motivating factor for development. It is important, or it is worth pointing out, that religious people, institutions can be considered as agents of advocacy, innovations, employment, social movements, and service delivery. All these combined, we call it development. There are intersections between religion and development that can be explored from various perspectives. What I mean by intersection, there is a link, or there are links between religion and development. We know that religion is here to guide the behavior of an individual, to make him direct, to follow a straight path. This is the role of religion. Without religion, I said earlier, people will go astray. People will be perish even, I can say. Look at, despite being guided by religion, look at the acts of people, how people do to their fellow human beings. So this is why we say we have to look at it from various perspectives. We all know that all religions of the world advocate peace. And without peace, we can't think of development. So peace can be considered the founding of development in any given society. So since religion is advocating peace, we are of the view that religion is very important for human development. I mean, be it economic, be it social. We now explore the different perspective of the interaction between religion and development. Religious ideas and practices shape development ideas and practice as well. Look at when we take the example of Islam, with the introduction of zakat payment. If Muslims throughout the world pay zakat as it's supposed to be, you can't find people who are suffering from poverty. But look at the Muslim world, what we are having. We have the most poor people in Muslim world. But because people are following the ideals of Islam, the ideals of the religion of Islam, people are not trying their best to make peace prevail among individuals. So religious faith may be an opener to serenity and meaning in life, especially when a person is in troubles. Look at poverty, illnesses, bereavement, for example. These are some of the few things that can affect a human being. So this is what we call intrinsic value of religion. We're motivated by what we expect to get in the future. I can say what we get in the hereafter. In this case, we can rightly say that religion contributes to people's flourishing and contentedness, and resulting in their well-being. So what is development? What do we understand by development? Development is a process by which members of a society increase their personal and institutional capacities to mobilize, to manage resources, to produce sustainable and to justly distribute improvements in their quality of life consistent with their aspiration. This is the definition of cotton. But if you look at the definition from the economic point of view, you see distributed improvements in their quality of life. What kind of distribution? Justly distribution. I mean a just distribution, equitable distribution. Allah has made people different. Allah has given to people so many things. Some are given, others are not given. Those who are given, Islam instructs them, religion is instructing them to support those who are not given well, for instance. Through what? Through the process of zakat, as I mentioned earlier. In other words, according to Dichia, development is not just a matter of reducing poverty and eliminating hunger. It is a question rather of building a world where everyone, no matter what is his social status, can have a full human life, freed from servitude imposed on him by her or by other people. Look at this definition. Although given by someone who is not Muslim, but it goes in line with the Islamic principles. That is why we try to look at this communication, the role of development, the role of religion in development. Look, he said, what is social status can have a full human life, freed from servitude. We are not supposed to be Sabian of other people, despite their level in society. The world given by some people, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to be distributed among others. This is the injunctions of Islam. People are there practicing. This is the question we ask. Now I come to the bitter colonization on African continent. The African continent was colonized by Western imperial powers and African empire. We have bitter memory, means memories that are not happy, and very painful wounds and scars resulting from past colonial experiences. And it starts lingering in the mind and soul of the African peoples. Africa's history is one of suffering, militarization, intrusion, oppression, subjugation, and failure. Over the centuries, Africa has suffered discrimination, marginalization, exploitation, and cultural imperialism, just to mention a few. As a result of this, the African people have lost their self-esteem, their feeling of self-worth, for instance, their human dignity, and their cultural distinctiveness. Although Africa is a multi-religious continent, peoples and communities are deeply divided on the basis of their so many beliefs, because it's religious. Belief is one that is divided. Instead now of uniting people, religion seems not religion. They are not following principles of religion, be it Christian or be it Muslim. They are divided by that belief. We cannot accept that. Because of belief, we believe in one God. Why are we then fighting one another? This is the big problem that we are facing because of religion. Because of culture, it is understood. Every people has its own culture. We don't have to be equal. We don't have to be the same in order to live in harmony. We have our own tradition, for instance. We have our own language. For instance, take the example of my country, Cameroon. We have more than 250 languages. The languages that we have should be a unifying factor, should be the one that blends people together. Is a factor of division, race, and gender. Although we may be from one race, African race, but we have social classes. We have division based on different tribes because of the language. We have, everyone knows African continent is blessed with a variety of resources. So geographically, Africa is a huge continent, the second largest of Asia. The continent is blessed with rich natural resources. And there is no single country in Africa without natural resources. This is the blessing of Almighty Creator to the African people. Not only Africa, all over the world, you will see countries that have natural resources. How? Are these natural resources helping? Are these natural resources contributing to the development? No, there are certain things that come to develop people. So that is, look at it. Islam, for example, or religion. With religion, all religion, as I said earlier, of the world, preach for peace. And without peace, we cannot think of development. Now, despite its richness, natural resources, it is the continent that houses the poorest countries in the world. It is not. So its people and communities continue to experience the deterioration of their native lands, resources, and environments. And indigenous peoples all over the continent have been unjustly and forcibly evicted from their village and ancestral lands. This is also the politics of our people. Even if they want to build something for the for the welfare of the public, there are some lands that are already owned by people. And now our policy makers, do they use this land appropriately? No. Do they compensate people who own the land in order to build projects? No. This is the problem that we have. And we claim ourselves to be religious. There is no one within the African continent who is not practicing a religion, even ancestral religion. The poor have been deprived of their means of livelihood and devastated by various diseases. African continent and religion. Religious pluralism is part of the makeup of African culture. It enriches common life, mutual relationships, and global solidarity. Africa is the second largest and second most populous continent in the world, with a religiously, linguistically, and culturally pluralistic population of almost 1 billion. Different religions perceive Africa as a breeding ground, a place where converts can be made easily. We are attached to religion, be it Christian or Muslims. For many years, this perception has led to the proliferation of various denominations on the continent, to the extent that almost all religious systems in the world exist in Africa in one form or another. As a result, the continent has become a mosaic of religions or a religious zoo. It is generally estimated that over 400 million Africans profess their Christianity and over 400 million to be Muslims. You see, majority of the population on the African continent are practicing one of the major two religions, that is Christianity and Islam. Why then, if let's say we really practice two religions, I'm sorry, why should we be suffering? We not be developed in that sense. So these figures confirm that the social composition of Africa is a religious one, and clearly show that Christianity and Islam currently have the largest followers in the continent's religious landscape. The presence of Christianity and Islam in Africa, among others, show that religious diversity has come to stay and will arguably remain within the continent until the end of time. Despite the plurality of religious beliefs in many African countries, concerted efforts will have to be made by all sectors of society in order to create an environment of peace and harmony. Only then can development be sustainable. So this is the only way we can have development. We should stop using religion to divide people. We should stop using cultural pluralism or linguistic pluralism to divide people. And this topic is on religion. So that is why I say, despite the plurality of religious beliefs in the African continent, it should not be the means of disintegration. Instead, it should be the means of harmony, making people to live in harmony. So the importance of the contribution of religious leaders and religious groups with specific development agendas, learning, teaming with governments and civil society toward achieving that goal cannot be overemphasized. We need to come together. We need to, government should be involved in regulating people's behavior as far as their religious belief is concerned. Religious leaders are very important agents of peace and environmentally friendly development. We say that peace is the backbone of development. If there is peace, people will be hardworking. People will do something for their own good. But if there is no peace, it shouldn't be. You have heard of Boko Haram in Cameroon, Nigeria. Areas where Boko Haram have been existing, poverty becomes their abode, becomes their way of life, because there's nothing they can do. Their lives are threatened. They cannot cultivate land. They cannot produce anything. Then we cannot talk of development. Now, religion, because what motivates these people to be involved in this kind of, terrorist group is religion. They say that people are not practicing religion the way it's supposed to be. But this is not true. They are only motivated by their own zeal. Allah knows why people use religion to create havoc in the society and claiming that they are doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This cannot be understood by someone who is rational. That is why in my presentation, I'm emphasizing on the role of religious leaders. Who could be the agent of peace? And the consequences of peace will be development. All that is needed is for Africa to harness its religious institution to become partners in a holistic development framework that will add value to development. With this, I end my talk, and if I get the chance to be involved in these group discussions, then I will be available. I thank you very much for being part of this conference, and we look forward to sharing ideas. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khair.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gali. And now we would like to... I have not done a few points. I think what is really interesting that the role of religious leader in development of Africa. I think that would be very interesting to discuss later on. We wait for the feedback from the audience later on, inshallah.
Thank you.
So, Prof. Gali, what time now in Cameroon? Is it Subuh already?
5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to the mosque.
Oh, you're going to the mosque now?
Yes, okay.
All right, so you will be joining us after this, inshallah, to discuss.
Yes, God willing.
All right, we will proceed with Professor Damin Kisburi, inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. You're welcome. I would like to call upon Emeritus Professor Damin Keksburi. Professor, welcome, Professor. Very good morning.
Good morning.
Wahaba. Do you still remember a Chinese word? A Chinese welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for such good time to share with us in our fourth conference. And you have, since our speaker has used a very, very effective time in presenting the papers, you have also another 30 to 40 minutes for presentation of the paper on the politics and development, democracy and transformative government. It is the timing for use. Thank you.
Very much.
Welcome, Prof.
I hope to be able to complete the presentation in a little less. I'd like to thank Professor Sawadi in particular for the invitation to present at this conference, and I would like to thank the conference organisers. It's a privilege to be able to speak to you today. Today I'll talk about politics and development, in particular the role of democracy in transformative government. And when I talk about this, one of the experiences I have in mind is that of Aceh, but also of Indonesia more broadly, of Timor-Leste and other developing countries. But before we start, we have to clarify what we mean by the term democracy. It's a term that gets used very widely, but often without much explanation for its meaning. So democracy is free and fair competitive elections. The elections must be devoid of fraud, and that criteria is what's known as the electoral procedural minimum. That is, it's the absolute minimum for democracy in any setting. Electoral processes should also have broad suffrage. That is, that the voters should be able to enrol to vote without any impediment. So there is a full representation of the electorate in the voting process. There should also be freedom of speech, assembly and association. And elected governments should have the effective power to govern. What that constitutes is an expanded procedural minimum. And I think that without the qualities of broad suffrage, freedom of speech, assembly and association, and the effective power to govern, democracy doesn't have meaning. A government must be able to have effective power to govern. It can't be held in check by big companies or by other governments or by vested interests. And of course, freedom of speech is essential to a democratic process. Without freedom of speech, there's no expression of ideas. There's no engagement with the political process. So too with assembly and association. They're often expressed in formal terms. Electoral commissions often specify those requirements. What they don't tend to specify are what's known as the rules of the game. And that is where voters and participants in the electoral process agree to unwritten rules. For example, not trying to interfere with or change election processes or outcomes. And of course, we all know of the example of the United States, where that happened a couple of years ago, with continuing consequences. That there should be acceptance of electoral outcomes. That is, that once an election is decided, all parties agree that the process was conducted fairly and they respect the outcome, even if they were unsuccessful. A democracy, to be functional, cannot rule to the exclusion of losing party supporters. That is, it can't say, we have a majority, therefore we will exclude or punish you. That would be counter to the liberal, inclusive nature of democratic processes. And similarly, winning parties should not seek to punish losing candidates. There has been a tendency in some countries to punish losing candidates, to try to exclude them from the electoral process, to send them to jail or otherwise. what that means is the democratic process is inhibited because those losing candidates cannot feel free to participate in the electoral process in the future. So why democracy? Why not some other system? Well, authoritarianism, as a very common alternative to democracy, is prone to brutality and corruption. That is, it's non-accountable. We know that authoritarianism of one type or another is now the dominant political model in the world. Democracy is in decline or in retreat. There are fewer democracies now than there were 20 years ago. Authoritarian is increasing, but authoritarian political systems do tend to be brutal, that they don't tolerate dissent. And because they're non-accountable, people who hold power can behave with impunity. And that, of course, is not good for social development. It's a social negative. An alternative model is the consensus model. The problem with consensus politics is that the stronger voices tend to prevail. They tend to have their way. So even though a strong voice might be in the minority, they might be able to override the weaker voices of the many. So consensus politics has inherent problems in it. It's good in terms of building agreement, but it may mean that agreement is achieved at the expense of weaker voices, which, as I say, may be in a majority. And of course, totalitarianism doesn't allow any other voices at all. It limits ideas. It tends to be very closed. It is socially regressive, and economically, it has shown itself in numerous examples to not function especially well over the longer term. So totalitarianism obviously is a problematic political model. I think it's also important to highlight that democracy is a good in its own right. Most people like to be able to express their political views without hindrance, and they want to be included in decision-making processes. And when you start looking at societies which have millions of people, of course, the only way you can really include people in decision-making processes is through the electoral process. So democracy is a good in its own right, and it's an expression of individual and community dignity. And I think that's an inherent quality in democracy which is missing from other political systems. We also know that from experience over decades now, the competition of ideas is good for development. And of course, a democracy is essentially about the competition for ideas. Where there's no competition for ideas, economic development tends to be sluggish, often goes backwards. There's no new impetus, no new input, and it doesn't tend to keep up with systems in which a number of different ideas are encouraged, perhaps selected, some are rejected, but through that process, the development process is able to proceed. In terms of democratic representation, there should be, in a proper democratic process, a competition of philosophies and paradigms. When I say this, we should have in a political system parties and candidates which have ideas which are fundamental to how a good society should be run. And they bring these ideas forward, often as policies and programs for the voters to be able to decide on. In many cases, electoral political systems do not have parties which run on the idea of competing philosophies and paradigms. And as a consequence, they tend to be fairly poor in terms of presenting policies. And I think most of the audience would be able to think of examples where that's the case, where political candidates tend to stand on their personal popularity rather than on the ideas they bring to the political process or the political competition. Of course, when you have groupings of people who adhere to particular policies or programs, you form political parties, and that's the basis, or should be the basis of parties. Parties should not be, if you like, Alaran, should not be streams of influence related to individuals who compete on the basis of their personal popularity. Parties should come together around sets of ideas upon which the members of the party tend to agree. And I think, again, if we look at examples that we are familiar with, we know that very often that does not happen. And I think that where that does not happen, that shows a democratic immaturity, that democracy has not yet developed to the point where there is a competition of interests based on, for example, economic circumstances or whatever. It's also critical, and I think this is a really undersold element of democracy, particularly in developing countries, is that being elected is not a privilege. Sorry, is not a private privilege. It's a public service. People who are elected represent their constituencies, and they are elected to serve their constituencies. Now, this goes contrary to how some societies traditionally understand themselves, but it is fundamental to the notion of a democratic process representing its constituents. Elected people should be there to serve their constituency, not to rule over them. And I think that also applies to public servants, to people who are employed by governments to implement government policy. The bureaucracies often end up becoming powers within their own right. And I think this misunderstands the essential function of bureaucracies, which is to implement policies in the service of citizens, not to feather bed their own situation, not to take advantage of it, not to exercise power against the citizens of the state, but to provide services to the citizens of the state in line with the policies and programs of the elected government. A proper functioning democracy should be transparent. And of course, the reasons why it needs to be transparent is because transparency limits corruption and it limits mismanagement. When there is not transparency of government processes, you do tend to see an increase in corruption and you do tend to see an increase in mismanagement. And that obviously undermines the purpose for which elected politicians are to serve. This goes too to the question of accountability, that elected politicians have to answer for their questions and their failures. And they answer for their actions and their failures at the ballot box. So a government which is elected for, say, a 3 or 4 or 5 year period, if it performs well during that period, it can be re-elected if it has popular support. However, if it doesn't perform well, if it fails, if it engages in corruption or whatever, then the voters have the opportunity to change the government and to say, okay, you haven't done well enough, so we're going to look for somebody else. That provides incentive for politicians to do the best job they can because they want to be re-elected. Many years ago, I was doing democracy training in a country in Southeast Asia. I won't name it. And I mentioned that to them. I said, look, you don't need to use violence and intimidation to get elected. And the candidates said to me, how do we get elected? And I said, do your job well, do it on behalf of the people you're meant to serve, and they will vote for you. And interestingly, that was a novel and new idea to those candidates. They hadn't actually considered the idea that doing their job well would mean that they could be re-elected. They had historically relied on violence and intimidation. There are, of course, limits to democracy. It's not perfect, and it can't offer perfection. Democracy is very much a reflection of the people and the ideas which give it life. There's a saying that democracy, in many respects, is the worst of all political systems. The qualifier to that is, except for all of the others that have been tried from time to time. Democracy is not perfect. It does fail. It can't offer perfection. It can allow winner-take-all electioneering, the 50% plus one dictatorship, if you like. That is not what it's meant to do. And that's why a quality of democracy in the rules of the game is that elected politicians govern for all, not for the 50% plus one. Democracy does require regular elections, which means electoral cycles, and that can make long-term planning difficult. It means that politicians tend to look at planning for 3, 4 or 5 year cycles. So they often will implement, for example, significant and unpopular changes in the first year or two of their rule, and then they will start to spend and be generous in the last year or two of their period of rule, because they want to win back votes. But what that means is, of course, you have short planning cycles, and that's not necessarily a positive for economic development. And that is obviously a problem that is inherent in democratic processes. In an ideal world, you would have agreement between competing parties or competing candidates on the broad outlines of policy, economic policy in particular. So there could be long-term planning, and that a change of government did not mean necessarily that there would be an undermining of a prior economic agreement or economic program. But it's very difficult to get that sort of agreement because, by definition, candidates and parties represent different interests. And of course, I think we all know that democracy is in trouble in the West. The countries which gave rise to democracy originally are now struggling with it. We're seeing the rise of the radical right, the anti-democratic radical right in Europe, in Germany, in France, in Greece, in Spain, even in the UK. We've seen democracy be significantly damaged in the United States in recent years. And it looks now like the way the next presidential election is going to go, that problem could continue or could have another lease of life. So democracy is not guaranteed. Once it's put in place, it's not about set and forget. It needs constant maintenance and upkeep. It is vulnerable to scaremongering. It is vulnerable to scapegoating of minorities, and it is vulnerable to populism, where candidates will tell the people what they think they want to hear without necessarily putting in place policies which are intended for the long-term benefit of society. And we certainly do see that in Western countries at the moment. And this in part explains why democracy has declined as a political force in the last 20 years. There are some statistics on that, but I won't go into it at the moment. But we really have seen a decline both in the quantity and more importantly, in many respects, the quality of democracy in the West and more globally. So democracy does not work if it's passive. We can't just say, okay, now we have a democratic system, we can sit back and look at it and it will be okay. It does require the active engagement of citizens. And again, what we see in many countries is that citizens have become passive, that they don't care in between electoral cycles. They don't care what their politicians do. They don't hold them to account, and they don't engage actively in the system. And this means that politicians become lazy. They have more of a tendency towards a lack of transparency, and as a consequence, they have more of a tendency towards corruption and mismanagement. And of course, that undermines trust in politicians, that increases cynicism on the part of citizens, and the citizens continue to disengage. What you see as a consequence of that is significant democratic decline or potentially the end of democratic processes. And of course, the alternative to democratic processes are varieties of authoritarianism, which I think most people would regard as unwelcome and unhelpful. It's worth noting when people complain about political leaders that we do end up getting the political leaders we deserve. And I know that's in a way a hard statement, but what it means is if we are not prepared to engage in the political process, to actively ensure that our politicians are working for us, and to criticise them publicly when they don't, and to put up alternatives, we don't do that as active citizens, then we will end up with the political leaders that we allow to take over. And we deserve it because we've been lazy. This goes back, as I say, to the fundamental quality that democracy does not work if it's passive. It only works if there's active citizen engagement. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Damin, for such an insightful talk, particularly on democracy and on politics and development, where you focus on the democracy and transformative government. And I have a few points to write here. That is, of course, there is a significant contribution of democracy for development, where democracy not only provides better ideas to be collected, and also there is transformation, transparency and accountability. But democracy can only work ideally will work if the people is actively involving in politics, so that a better leadership could be achieved through the election. Although there is a limitation of this democracy, where democracy can't work when the people is passive, and because of the cycle of election, there is not possible for the leaders to plan a better plan for the development in the future. Thank you very much, Prof. I hope I get your point. And now we open the session for question and answer. For those joining online, you can write the question through the chat room. And for those inside the hall, you can have a chance to directly question the honorable speakers. Thank you very much. I would like to ask for the assistant to see if you hand, if any would like any question to be raised. And you could address to whom the question will be addressed. And for your information, Professor Gali has excused himself because he has to leave to time for Fajr prayer. So he left to the mosque. And he will join us right away after he prayed the Subuh, the Fajr prayer. Any question, audience inside the hall? Or perhaps, organizer, could you please check whether there is a question in the chat room? Brothers from, okay, we have a question from our participant from Kuala Lumpur. Please.
Hello. Okay, good day, Professor, and all the audience inside this beautiful hall. And first of all, my name is Aizat, Prof, and I'm from Malaysia. I'm also a student of Peace and Conflict Study from Science Malaysia. And based on your expertise, I would like to ask one question pertaining your previous experience in dealing with the peace process between Gerakan Aceh Merdeka and also the government of Indonesia. And if you could share with us, when we want to bring all the two conflicting parties to go to the peace process, of course, we need to make the power between the conflict parties is balanced. For example, from the asymmetrical conflict to become a symmetrical conflict. So if you could share with us, the challenge for you in order to mix the conflicting party into from the asymmetrical to become a symmetrical in order to empowering the Gerakan Aceh Merdeka, the peace panel from them. If you could share with what is the challenge. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Brother Aizat. The question is about your experience. It would be a very great experience for us to listen. Please, Prof.
It's one that I have thought about many times, of course, over the years since the Aceh peace process in Helsinki in 2005. The original position of the Indonesian government was that it was not a negotiation between equals, that it was to be the Indonesian government would dictate the terms of the agreement, and GAM, Free Aceh Movement, would agree to those terms. And very early on in the process, we said, if the Indonesian government is to persist with that position, then the talks will stop. And there will be failure and there will be continued conflict. The whole process was a gamble in the sense that we knew that if the talks stopped, then conflict would continue and the people of Aceh, more than anything, the people of Aceh would suffer. And after the 2004 tsunami, it was agreed that the people of Aceh had suffered enough already. So we had to find a way forward to continue the talks without giving in to this unbalanced approach by the Indonesian government. And the way we did that was essentially by finding points that we could agree on that were not controversial. They were small things, not important. Once we did that, then we could start having a discussion about, okay, do you really want to find a resolution to the conflict? Do you want to start addressing some of the fundamental problems? And the Indonesian government said yes, they did. Again, they tried to impose rules around what could be discussed and what could be agreed on. And I have to say that the mediator, former Finnish President Matti Ahtisaari, did a very good job when he said, look, this process cannot work if you continue to make rules. We must have a discussion between two groups, both of which give and take. So this was his essential role, his function. And as a consequence of that, we were able to proceed, as I say, agreeing on small things which didn't really matter, and then building up confidence. I had a meeting with then Vice President Yusuf Kala, where we agreed, this was in Jakarta, where we agreed that the process would work in that way, that we would try to find agreement around lots of small things and leave the hard things until the end, rather than fall over at the first hurdle. If the process was going to fail, we would fail at the last hurdle, not the first. So that's how the process went. And the Indonesian delegation, at the instruction of Yusuf Kala, agreed to that process. When we got to the end of the process, and this was about the democratization of Aceh, Aceh having its own political parties, which is in contravention of Indonesian law. There was pushback. The Indonesian delegation said they could not agree to that. And we had thought at that time that the process would fail. We actually went past the last day, the last hour of the last day of the negotiations. So technically the negotiations had finished without agreement. And our team, the GAM team, asked the head of the Indonesian delegation, Hamid Awaludin, to come into our rooms, and we asked, were you serious? Did you really want a peace agreement, or was this just a waste of time? He said, no, we did really want a peace agreement, but we have difficulty with this last and the most important point, which was about political parties in Aceh. And we talked about this for a while, and we finally worked out some words which we could both agree with. It was very clumsy, very poorly expressed. And the reason it was poorly expressed was because we had both sides saying, we want this word, we don't want that word. And when you have two people trying to construct a sentence or a group of sentences who are in disagreement, then you end up with an agreed set of words which both sides can live with, but which don't actually express an idea in its most eloquent sense. But it was enough. It was enough. And what it did achieve is that although the law on the governing of Aceh was inadequate and did not implement all of the memorandum of understanding which arose as a consequence of the peace agreement, it did allow for the creation of political function. And that was a huge breakthrough for Aceh. Since then, many Achenese have come to me and said, our democracy is not working. We have all of these problems. We don't have good service. We have leaders that don't necessarily listen to us. And we're not happy. We want a better democracy. And my answer to them is, the democracy that Aceh got in 2005 was a blank slate. It was what the people of Aceh were going to make it. Now, there have been a series of successful elections in Aceh, and I think that's a very positive outcome. There has been the development of political parties which have programs which start to correspond to political parties that you might find established in other countries. And we have seen some movement, but I go back to my final point of my presentation. If people do not actively engage in the democratic process, then the democratic process will not deliver. It won't give them what they want. It may not give them what they want anyway, because if your candidate loses an election, then you don't get what you want. But if you don't put in the effort, if you don't engage actively, then there's no chance because you've made no effort. And this is what I've continued to tell my friends in Aceh since 2005, that if they want the political process in Aceh to work better, they have to become actively engaged. They have to own the process, make it their own, and make it work.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for the sharing of the experience. And inshallah, if God will, we will have a special session actually to call you, Prof, to come to ICoSPOLHUM University, just to brief us how the strategy to bring this to what do you call that one? Rival groups to sit down together until they reach the agreement and they sign. So it seems that Indonesia can get out of the conflicts in a very clean way, and then also the GAM also, you can reach the win-win solution as what we have today. In the long run, it's everything like now Aceh is experiencing transforming from negative peace to positive peace. And really need your advice for the future so that this peace will be long, and then for lasting peace, of course, there will be no more conflict. Of course, conflict is sometimes good for development, but not conflict as it was. A better conflict smarter conflicts in the form of competition. Thank you very much, Prof. I would like to ask the audience, perhaps there will be another question for Professor Nizarlin on social integration. And please, could somebody read the chat, please? Prof. Gali already joining us now. Perhaps any question on religion and development in African experience? Yes. All right. Can you, first question please up. We have one question from the chat room. Kasih naik, Dek. Bisa. All right, we have question from Sister Dr. Chut Sukmawati. It is interesting to discuss AI, especially the two phases of media, but unfortunately, Pak Kamsong already invited for the podcast. The second question, please we go there. Second question, please, down. Goes to speaker of ex-combatant, is Prof. Nizarli. Yeah. Do you think that it is possible to have them reintegrated fully to their own society, knowing that we are human, characterized by prejudice and impression? Mungkin nggak ex-kombatan ini terintegrasi secara menyeluruh, dikarenakan apalagi kita melihat manusia itu punya prejudices, ya, prasangka yang tidak baik dan impresi yang tidak baik. I would like Prof. Nizarlin to address this question, please.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that is possible because reintegration is depend on situation of economic and social welfare. If we talking about almost of ex-combatant, not person by person. If person by person, of course, we can't guarantee everyone will be reintegrated. But if we talking about for the almost ex-combatant, that's possible to be reintegrated in one group or unite with the civil society. As our study, based on our study in Nisam Antara, we can show that where ex-combatants and victims, when we feel together, when we feel they are brotherhoods and they can get economic prosperity and social welfare, they can unite. So I think what happens in Nisam Antara is different if we compare with the other countries, as Burundi, Sierra Leone, and Nepal. In that countries, social capital or local wisdom is very less. So no bridge to make it meetings between ex-combatants and civil society after conflicts. If in Aceh we have local wisdom and we have social capital that make it happens. Yeah, I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Nizarlin. Actually, the question was forwarded by Professor Gali from Cameroon. And I'm very sorry to let you know, Professor Gali, that Pa Usman Kansong was invited to attend the podcast in the campus. So he really want to stay to discuss about the AI development in Indonesia, and then how it goes with the technological development in Indonesia. But unfortunately, he has to leave for the podcast that has been invited by the university. And I think that is the answer from Professor Nizarlin, where he tried to first compare between the ex-combatant from Sierra Leone, Nepal, and Burundi. And now he see that how in the experience of a Chinese ex-combatant, where they slowly has been reintegrated into a society, although they found from their research that they have failed to become the contractor, the businessman, but most of them has joined the political party. They became they grew as slowly became the new elite in local politics, and even now they try to get involved in national level of politics for the general election, this coming election in 2024. Thank you very much. Thank you. Perhaps we have a closing statement from Professor Damin. Please, Prof.
I guess that there has been a number of successful elections. There have been candidates, and the situation now is, I believe, better than it has been in the past. It's not perfect by any means, and it will take a very long time before it becomes satisfactory in the eyes of most Chinese. We do need to go back, though, to the basic ideas of how a democracy is supposed to function. And if I remember correctly, in the early days of Aceh's democratization, there was no acceptance, or not as much acceptance, of political competition. There was a view that all the competing political parties were in like almost a death struggle. There was some violence, which was regrettable. And occasionally, I think there still is a sense of loyalty based around personalities, and sometimes not as much around ideas. And this is an element of our Chinese democracy which I think still needs to be developed and strengthened. So what I would like to see is candidates and parties competing for elections in Aceh to come up with programs and ideas which are aimed at materially improving the lives of Aceh citizens, not so much drawing on their history as having been combatants or student activists or whatever their case may be. That was important. And we can't forget the history. But the history is now behind us. It's now been 18 years since the war finished. And that is enough time for people to start moving on and to start developing policies based on political philosophies and presenting them to the people and saying, vote for me because I have the best ideas for your future. And if the politicians don't do that, I would ask the people of Aceh to hold them accountable, to say, you must do this. If you do not do this, we will not vote for you. And only in that way will the democracy in Aceh flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Damin. And before we give a chance for Prof. Gali for his closing note, but we have one question for Prof. Gali from Prof. Swadi Zainal Abidin. They had how religion apply to create sustainable development in the African experience.
Okay, thank you for this question. It's how does Islam apply to to achieve sustainable development in the African continent? During my speech, I tried to show that religion, instead of being a unifying factor, has become a dividing factor. People go by their emotions. That is why it looks like Islam, instead of creating peace and harmony, tend to divide people because of their own orientation. We have those who follow some sect. We call them like Tariqa. You know, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, we have these groups, Tariqa, Ahmadiyya, Tariqa, Tijaniya. We have divide in that. And we have the Sunni group. So you see, instead of being a unifying factor based on this divide, people tend to, to hang to each sect, and to try even to call the other group as unbelievers, which is very extreme cases. And this tend to be to create instability. And then when there is instability, it couldn't be peace. So, and we know also, religion also preaches tolerance, and we lack it while practicing our own religion based on our sects. And this is the thing that we know. In one of the hadiths, it is said that a religion by the end of life we may have more than 70 groups, sects. You see, so these sects, instead of creating happiness, instead of creating harmony, create instability. And with instability, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, we can't achieve development. So this is how we have to be tolerant as far as our religion is concerned. We have to be tolerant as far as, differences in terms of religious practices are concerned. Let the Creator judge its servants. Instead of you, human, judging your fellow human being, telling him not to be a true believer because he is practicing so and so. Let the Creator judge his servant instead of you. That's why mind your own business. I can say that. Although, in terms of religion, you say if you see something going on and you don't prevent it by your hands, by your tongue, prevent it in your heart. That means try to hate it in your heart. So instead of, that your action will lead to instability, it is not good to practice it, to do the act. So it's better to abstain from doing that. So that is what I said. With religious tolerance, we can apply religion in order to achieve development. We will become helpful to one another. So I hope that I answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gali, for insightful answer. That is, I think the key word is tolerance, religious
exactly,
tolerance, where everybody is trying to not to judge them. Let God judge the slave, of course. We have no right to judge anybody. Only God has the right to judge His own creation. And I would like to have your closing statement, please, Prof. Gali.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. I'm really very glad to be part of this intellectual, activity groupings. I really listened to Professor Damian Kingsbury. I'm very much impressed by his, interpretation of democracy and how it can contribute to development. Really, I do appreciate. I appreciate the talk on artificial intelligence. I asked a question on ex-combatant. I'm very much satisfied with this answer. So what I can say, I will just repeat, or I will just add, based on my presentation, I have tried to show that I think throughout the world, we have misconceived what we call religion. Really. There is one thing we cannot prevent, to become extreme. There are some people who are really attached to the religion to the extent of becoming extremists. So this extremism is not doing good to our own societies. Instead, it is creating instability, insecurity. So you find people, instead of practicing religion as it's supposed to be practiced, go beyond that one. They are so enthusiastic and they practice religion to that extent. And we know that all religion, especially from Muslim perspective, religions create balance. We cannot, even in terms of worship, you can't worship God and you give up other things related to your life. You cannot say, I will be worshiping God only, I may not do this, I may not do this. I may not even get married, or I may not produce children. There are some people who go to that extreme. But this is not a religion. Religion calls for moderation. We have to be moderate in practicing our religion. I hope with this, we can achieve sustainable development, we can achieve harmony in our society, and people will live in peace, and development will follow. Thank you very much. This is what I have to say.
Thank you very much for the closing remark from Professor Gali. And the last but not least, we would like to ask Professor Nizarlin for his closing remark, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Muhammad. I think we have to build our optimizing to the reintegration is a mean of sustainable of peace in the world. So that we have to make local wisdom, social capital, and economic prosperity is a tool to speed up and to strengthen reintegration and the sustainable of peace. And then we have to make many international conferences like this to share this knowledge to the world. And we have to write many articles about this. I, with myself, have written some articles in this case. And the newest one will be published, inshallah, next year on January in International Journal of Universitas Gadjah Mada. Thank you very much for the fruitful discussion. See you next year. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much to all our invited key speakers, and for such insightful talk and ideas. And to Professor Damin, thank you very much for the time. Prof. Gali from Cameroon, and Professor Kasung and Prof. Nizarlin. And we will have, going to close this session, morning session, and inshallah after Zuhr at 2 o'clock, we will begin with the second session. There will be, we have another speakers, professional Owen Podger from Canberra University, and also we have also Professor Aisha Abubakar from Al-Bukhari International University, and we have two other distinguished speakers from Technique, of course. They are focusing on new research and innovation from the University of Malik Saleh. So we hope all of our invited guest speakers would join the second session that is after Dhuhr at 2 o'clock Indonesian time. Thank you very much, Prof. Gali.
Thank you very much, my Dr. Muhammad.
Inshallah, we will see you in person one day, inshallah.
Will, inshallah, inshallah.
All right, perhaps we can take the documentation for the online participant. Please, all online participants, open your video camera so we can record the absentee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just wait for my command. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Second one. Probably 1, 2.
Yeah, I'm good.
3. Third. Yeah, good. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much to all participants online, and we hope you will rejoin us at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the second session. There will be another challenging speech. They will be delivered by 4 professors and candidate professors from different parts of the world in this 4th ICoSPOLHUM International Conference on Social Science, Political Science, and Humanities, organized by Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Malik Saleh, North Aceh, Indonesia. Thank you very much. See you at 2 o'clock for the session afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Lafiya, ba gaji, ki da sauki. Amin. Yau AICoSPOLHUM. So, lafiya sa, ba gajiya. Na da jiki da sauki.
Baru Pulse Bright Miracle membersihkan merawat, bercahaya. dengan 2 kali ekstrak malt susu vitamin dan mineral. Ayo semangat, isi lagi energi.
Sandang gerah leba suka to bate na bajud bajud suke imumput yang go donya suka to bate na bajud bajud suke imumput yang go donya suke imumput ida urang Islam wate jamun kon ide sepatka urang siga kun putun yang muban sabe